Okay, let's unpack this. Uh, Imagine a vision, right? So profound, so detailed, and honestly so mysterious that it's fascinated people for literally millennia. We're talking prophets, mystics, philosophers, even scientists.
Absolutely. It's one of those enduring symbols.
Exactly. And today, we're diving deep into one of the most enigmatic,
Yeah.
the Merkabah, the divine chariot. You first find it described in the biblical book of Ezekiel.
A truly foundational text for this whole idea.
Right. So our mission, as we explore these sources, is basically to pull out the key insights, understand how this idea evolved, and uncover its surprising influence across different cultures, different times.
And there are definitely some surprising connections to uncover. You might find some aha moments here.
Definitely hoping for some of those. So if we're going to get the Merkabah, we have to start at the source. Ezekiel's vision. It's just so intensely symbolic.
It really is. He describes this incredible divine chariot. Theologians, mystics, they've long seen it as symbolizing God's transcendence, omnipresence.
But it's the details that really grab you, isn't it? Like the four faces of these celestial creatures.
Right. A man, a lion, an ox, an eagle.
And each one is said to represent something different. Intelligence, strength.
Patience, swiftness. It embodies this idea of diversity, but also interconnectedness. It's not just random imagery.
And then you have the wheels within wheels.
Yeah.
That part always stood out to me. Rimmed with eyes.
Yes. Symbolizing God's omniscience, his omnipotence, this constant, all-seeing vigilance. It's quite a concept.
And finally, above it all, there's this, like, radiant humanoid figure on a sapphire throne.
Yeah.
Representing God's glory, his majesty's. Just wow.
So vivid.
But what's truly fascinating, I think, is the message behind the vision, especially for the Jewish exiles in Babylon at that time.
Okay, yeah, the context is crucial there.
Exactly. Their temple, their spiritual center in Jerusalem, it was destroyed. So this vision, it was radical. It offered immense comfort.
Because it showed that God's presence wasn't stuck in one physical building, not just confined to Jerusalem. Holiness, essentially, became portable.
Right. God could be with them anywhere.
Precisely. And that offered incredible hope, a renewed sense of purpose for people who'd been displaced. It completely changed how they could think about encountering the divine.
And this wasn't just a one-off vision, was it? Did this kind of imagery pop up elsewhere in the Bible? Did Ezekiel influence other writers?
Oh, absolutely. You definitely see echoes of this Merkabah motif later on. Think about Elijah's ascent.
Right, the chariot of fire.
Exactly. Or in the Psalms, where it describes God mounting a cherub and flying. Even in Daniel 7, you get the Ancient of Days on a fiery throne. It clearly draws on this powerful archetype.
That brings up an interesting point. Our sources touch on how personal background might shape how someone perceives the divine. They compare Ezekiel's vision, which is super detailed, almost like an outsider looking in.
Yeah, like a provincial trying to describe something overwhelming.
Compared to Isaiah's vision, which is shorter, maybe more like someone already familiar with the royal court. What does that tell us?
Well, it really suggests that our own background, our perspective, it profoundly shapes how we perceive and then describe the divine. Ezekiel, being a priest in exile, gives this almost, engineering-like description.
Because it was so foreign and huge to him?
And likely, yes. The sages even had this analogy like a peasant describing the king's palace he'd never seen before. It shows his awe. But, despite all that incredible detail, his vision was still considered a blurred reflection.
Compared to Moses.
Compared to Moses' direct vision of God, yes. It just underscores the limits of human language, human perception, when you're trying to grasp something truly indescribable.
Okay, so this amazing vision, it doesn't just stay on the page. It actually forms the basis for a whole new kind of Jewish esotericism, right? What we call the Merkabah Mysticism.
Exactly. And this wasn't just thinking about the chariot. We're talking about practitioners. They were known as Yordei Merkabah.
Which means descenders to the chariot.
That's right. And they actively sought to, ascend themselves into these heavenly realms described in the vision. It was an active practice.
More than just contemplation, then. It was a journey.
That's the key thing here. It wasn't just abstract thought. Merkabah mysticism was disciplined, almost methodical. You see this in certain texts.
Like the Hekkelot literature.
Precisely. The Hekkelot literature served as the key guides, basically spiritual roadmaps for the soul's ascent. They detail these specific routes through 7 heavenly palaces, or Hekkelot.
And each palace had, what, challenges? Guardians?
Yes,
Yeah.
guarded by angelic beings, and you needed to overcome specific challenges, perform specific rituals to pass through. It was a serious undertaking, not just passive meditation.
Wow. So when the sources talk about rigorous preparation,
Yeah.
what did that actually look like? Was it really that intense?
Oh, incredibly demanding. They describe intense spiritual prep, fasting, sometimes for days, wearing specific white garments, purifying oneself in water, and then reciting and even permuting divine names, chanting specific psalms, using visualization techniques, all this to induce these profound trance-like states needed for the journey.
And this wasn't common knowledge, right? It was kept secret.
Very much so. Strict secrecy surrounded these practices. They were seen as advanced, potentially dangerous, often passed down orally with really strong warnings against misusing them.
Which makes sense given the risks involved. And our sources mention a pretty stark warning tale about that.
Yes, the perils were considered very real. The classic cautionary tale is the four who entered Pardes.
Pardes meaning like a mystical orchard or garden, but representing this spiritual journey.
Exactly. A journey into profound, potentially dangerous levels of spiritual insight. And the story goes that out of 4 prominent sages who tried this, well, it didn't end well for most.
What happened?
Ben Azai reportedly died during the experience. Ben Zoma went mad. Elisha ben Abuya became an apostate. He lost his faith entirely. Only Rabbi Akiva is said to have emerged unscathed, having entered and left in peace. It's a story that really hammers home the extreme psychological, spiritual risks.
So it wasn't just metaphorical danger.
Well, some texts even describe practitioners being physically thrown around or threatened with fiery whips by angels if they made a mistake. It really highlights why they stressed readiness and spiritual purity so much.
Okay, so you have these intense guarded practices in early mysticism. How did the Merkabah idea keep evolving, especially when Kabbalah emerged in the medieval period? Did they reinterpret it?
That's a major shift, yes. Medieval Kabbalists took Ezekiel's vision and integrated it into a much bigger, more complex cosmological system.
You mean the Sephirah and the Four Worlds?
Exactly. The Sephirot, these 10 divine emanations, and the 4 worlds, Atzilut, Bariah, Yetzirah, Asaya, which represent levels of reality from pure divinity down to our physical world. They mapped Ezekiel's imagery onto this structure.
How did that work? What corresponded to what?
Well, generally, the figure on the throne was linked to Atzilut, the world of emanation, the throne itself to Bariah, the world of creation, the living creatures, the Chariot, to Yetzirah, the world of formation.
And the wheels.
The wheels, the Ophanim, to Asaya, the world of action, our physical reality. It became this intricate, layered understanding.
And I bet the symbolic connections deepen too, like the sapphire throne.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a fascinating link, some point out, between the Hebrew for sapphire, sapphire, and the word saphir itself. And the 4 creatures, they became associated with specific archangels and sephirotic qualities.
Like the lion being linked to
Big love.
Right,
Yes.
or Jews love mercy. And the ox often linked to Gabriel and Gevurah, strength judgment. It shows this really deep symbolic reading. Even the wheel within a wheel got reinterpreted.
How so?
It could represent the cyclical nature of divine forces, or maybe the way the different sephirotic channels interact and influence each other within this grand Kabbalistic system. Okay, this is where, for me, it gets really interesting, because Kabbalistic thought didn't just stop at mapping an external chariot or even a mystical journey. They introduced this radical idea that a person could become the Merkabah.
That's the profound shift, yes. The idea that a human being can actually embody the Merkabah, become a vessel for the Shekinah, the divine presence.
By balancing parts of the soul.
Essentially, yes. By aligning and balancing the different aspects of the soul, analogous perhaps to how the 4 creatures were aligned in the vision, it internalized the whole concept.
So what did that mean for spiritual practice? Did the journey stop?
The focus shifted. It moved away from, let's say, literal ascent narratives for many. Kabbalists started using intricate diagrams. You see things like the diagram of the 7 palaces, or how Merkabah elements were integrated into the Tree of Life diagrams.
As meditation tools.
Exactly. Visual aids for contemplation. And the practices evolved. Think of Abulafian ecstatic Kabbalah, Abraham Abulafia's school.
Right, he focused on direct experience, didn't he?
Yes, on achieving prophetic states.
Yeah.
His techniques involve things like controlled breathing, meditating intensely on permutations of Hebrew letters. The goal was less about seeing a vision and more about achieving this inner union, this intellectual enlightenment, this deveket, or cleaving to God. It became a contemplative internal ascent through the structure of the Sephirot.
It's just amazing how one vision spun out into so many diverse interpretations over centuries. Let's pivot now to how more modern scholars, even scientists, have looked at all this,
Mm.
starting with academia. Gershom Scholem, he's basically the father of modern study of Jewish mysticism, right? What was his take?
Scholem really validated Merkabah mysticism as a genuine pursuit of divine vision. He saw it as absolutely crucial, a precursor to the later Kabbalah. And he took the Hekdelah texts quite seriously, seeing them as evidence of actual trance journeys undertaken by these ancient sages.
So he believed they were really doing this.
That was his interpretation, yes. That these texts described real mystical experiences, real practices.
But then Moshe Idol came along, another major scholar, and he offered a different angle, didn't he?
He did. Idol presented a more nuanced view. He pushed back against Scholem, sometimes labeling it as Gnostic, for instance. Idol really emphasized the diversity within Merkabah mysticism.
Meaning it wasn't just one thing.
Right. He argued it wasn't only about ecstatic trance journeys. There was also a strong intellectual component, achieving connection through deep Torah study. And Idol saw more continuity, a continuous thread of ecstatic practices running from Merkabah right into medieval Kabbalah, challenging the idea that the experiential side got totally downplayed later on. It sparked quite a debate.
Beyond the historical angle, lots of modern scholars look at these Merkabah stories symbolically or psychologically, like peeling an onion to find deeper meanings.
Exactly. So the ascent through the heavens, maybe that represents different levels of consciousness or stages of psychological development.
And the scary angels and tests they faced.
Those could be metaphors for our own inner barriers, the psychological obstacles we have to overcome on our own path to growth or enlightenment.
And the throne of glory at the end.
That becomes a powerful symbol for enlightenment itself, or achieving union with the divine. It makes these ancient, maybe strange-sounding narratives feel much more relevant to the human journey today.
And then there's the Jungian perspective, which takes it even deeper.
Right. Jungians might see the entire Merkabah structure as an archetype of the self, the integrated whole personality.
With the four creatures representing?
The four fundamental psychological functions: thinking, feeling, intuition, sensation. The whole vision becomes a symbol of the psyche striving for integration, for individuation. They'd even suggest that if Merkabah-like images show up in someone's dreams, it could indicate this deep inner quest for wholeness.
Now, this is fascinating. There are even scientific speculations, neurological theories about what might be happening in the brain during such visions.
Yes, this is definitely intriguing territory. Some scientists propose that the kind of phenomena described, dazzling lights, complex geometric patterns like wheels, maybe even feelings of movement, could potentially align with symptoms associated with certain neurological conditions.
Like what?
Things like temporal lobe epilepsy or migraine auras or even hypnagogic hallucinations, those vivid experiences you can have when falling asleep or waking up.
And researchers have actually studied this.
There's research by people like Dr. V.S. Ramachandran looking at brain function and spiritual experiences, and neuroimaging studies that try to see what parts of the brain are active during meditation or reported mystical states. It raises a really big question, of course.
Which is?
Does finding a possible neurological correlation diminish the spiritual significance? Or does it just give us insight into the biological mechanisms the brain might use to facilitate or interpret these extraordinary experiences? It's a huge debate.
And way back in the 12th century, you had Maimonides, the great rationalist philosopher, offering a completely different take, almost anti-mystical.
Well, certainly radically different from the Hekdelah mystics. Maimonides fundamentally reframed Ezekiel's vision. He argued it wasn't a literal description of a heavenly chariot or angels at all.
So what was it, according to him?
He saw it as an allegory, a complex philosophical treatise about, essentially, Aristotelian cosmology, metaphysics, and physics, disguised in visionary language.
So the wheels, the creatures, they were symbols for.
Celestial spheres, the different levels of intelligences that govern the cosmos in the Aristotelian view, the laws of nature. He wanted to move interpretation away from literal anthropomorphic readings towards a more rational philosophical understanding. It was about the structure of reality, not a mystical joyride.
It's just amazing. But this core idea, the soul ascending, often in some kind of divine vehicle, it's not just in Judaism, is it? It seems to pop up everywhere.
It really does feel like a universal motif, reflecting this deep human desire for transcendence, for connection with something beyond the ordinary.
Where else do we see parallels?
Well, in Hinduism, you have concepts like the Vimana, described in texts as celestial flying vehicles for the gods. And in practices like Raja Yoga or Tantra, the body itself is sometimes seen as a vessel.
Right, with the Kundalini energy rising.
Exactly, ascending through the chakras, aiming for higher consciousness, sometimes involving visualizing deities on lotus thrones. It's an internal ascent.
And Christianity. There are links there too, aren't there?
Definitely. Jewish apocalyptic literature, including Ezekiel, had a clear influence on the New Testament's Book of Revelation. Think of the four living creatures around the throne there.
Which later got linked to the four evangelists, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John.
Precisely. And you have the Apostle Paul's own account of being caught up to the third heaven. Whether in the body or out, he wasn't sure. Plus, visions of Christian mystics like Hildegard of Bingen often share thematic similarities: heavenly ascents, divine light, angelic beings.
What about Islam?
A very strong parallel exists in the Mirage of the Prophet Muhammad's miraculous night journey. He ascended through the seven heavens, guided by the angel Jibril, riding a winged creature called the Buraq.
That sounds very much like the Merkabah accounts.
It does. And Sufi mystics, the mystical branch of Islam, often interpret the Mirage allegorically as a symbol of the soul's own potential journey towards God.
And we see echoes in Gnosticism too, though maybe with a different goal.
Yes, Gnostic texts often describe the soul's journey after death, ascending through hostile heavens ruled by archons needing secret passwords or knowledge to pass. They sometimes mention a light chariot or light vessel for this ascent. But the underlying goal in Gnosticism was often about escaping the flawed material creation, which is different from the communion sought in Merkabah mysticism.
Okay, and Hermeticism.
Hermetic traditions speak of the ascent through the planetary spheres, sometimes called the Ogdoadic ascent, where the soul sheds earthly attachments linked to each planet as it rises towards the divine. They also had concepts of a subtle body or astral body used for this kind of spiritual travel.
Even shamanism seems to fit this pattern.
Absolutely. Shamanic practices across many cultures involve trance states, where the shaman's soul is believed to travel to other worlds, upper worlds, or underworlds.
How do they travel?
Often by climbing a symbolic world tree or cosmic mountain, or being carried by spirit animals. Siberian shamans might use their drum, calling it their steed. Huichol shamans in Mexico use peyote visions to journey to the land of their gods. The underlying pattern of transcendent travel is remarkably consistent.
So it's clear the Merkabah isn't just some dusty artifact. It's alive and well, adapted into the modern world in some pretty diverse ways. How did the New Age movement pick it up?
The New Age really embraced and transformed it. Early figures like Madame Blavatsky in Theosophy interpreted the Merkabah more universally as a kind of light body accessible to adepts for astral travel.
Kind of detaching it from its Jewish roots.
To a degree, yes. And then later, writers like Drunvalo Melchizedek really popularized the concept of Merkabah meditation. He presented it as a personal energy field, a geometric field of light around the body that could be activated for healing, protection, and spiritual growth.
Using that star tetrahedron image, the Merkabah star.
Exactly. And ideas from sacred geometry. This really democratized the practice, making it accessible to anyone interested, turning it into a tool for personal empowerment, quite different from the original secretive, high-risk, mystical practice.
And wasn't there a resurgence in Western occultism too, back in the 19th century?
Oh, yes. Groups like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, very influential. They integrated Merkabah symbolism deeply into their magical system. Figures like Eliphas Levi connected Ezekiel's four creatures to the tarot, to the elements, even controversially to his depiction of Baphomet.
And Aleister Crowley.
Crowley also used Merkabah imagery, often as a symbol of achieving magical mastery, the magician's perfected will, linking it to his concept of the body of light as a vehicle for consciousness to travel in other realms.
Okay, now for maybe the most out there interpretation, the ancient astronaut theory.
Right. This one definitely generated attention. Writers like Eric von Daniken in books like Chariots of the Gods looked at Ezekiel's description.
The wheels, the movement, the figure.
And argued it wasn't a divine vision, but a description of an encounter with an extraterrestrial spacecraft.
Seriously. And wasn't there a NASA engineer who took this seriously?
Yes, Joseph F. Blumrich. He was an engineer who initially set out to debunk von Daniken, but ended up concluding the description was technically plausible as a kind of vehicle, and he even patented an omnidirectional wheel based on his interpretation of Ezekiel's wheels.
Wow. But critics obviously push back hard on this.
Oh, absolutely. Scholars of religion and biblical studies largely view this as highly reductionist. They argue it ignores the rich theological context, the symbolic language common in prophetic visions, and is basically projecting modern UFO fascination onto an ancient text.
So stripping away the layers of meaning.
Pretty much, yeah. Reducing a profound mystical text to just a misidentified flying saucer.
Okay, so beyond these specific groups, how has the Merkabah just sort of seeped into general pop culture? It feels like it crops up in unexpected places.
It really has. You see it in comic books, sometimes as a source of power or a divine entity, in fantasy novels. Anime is a big one. Neon Genesis Evangelion famously uses Kabbalistic and Merkabah symbolism, though often in complex, sometimes ambiguous ways.
Video games, too.
Definitely. Games like Dungeons and Dragons have featured creatures inspired by the living creatures or powerful celestial beings. The Shin Megami Tensei series frequently uses religious and mythological figures, including those related to Merkabah themes.
And music, art.
You hear references in lyrics, maybe from bands like Tool or electronic artists like Bass Nectar using the term or related concepts. Visually, artists known for psychedelic or spiritual themes like Alex Grey or Android Jones often incorporate Merkabah-like geometric forms and light body imagery. Even fashion, you'll see the Merkabah star symbol on clothing or jewelry. It's become quite widespread.
But this popularization, this easy access, it brings up tricky issues, doesn't it? Commodification, maybe appropriation.
It's a really complex and sensitive area. You have something that was originally considered incredibly sacred, part of a specific religious tradition, guarded knowledge requiring immense preparation.
And now it's on a t-shirt or sold in a weekend workshop.
Exactly. This raises concerns, especially within parts of the Jewish community, about potential cultural appropriation. Is the deep theological meaning being lost or trivialized? Is it being used disrespectfully, often completely stripped of its Jewish origins and context?
Was looting its meaning.
That's the worry. That it becomes just another spiritual commodity detached from the tradition and the centuries of interpretation that gave it depth. It's a difficult balance between universal spiritual seeking and respecting specific cultural and religious heritage.
It highlights how the word Merkab itself has almost shifted meaning in popular use. People talk about activating your Merkabah.
Right, using it almost like a verb, or referring to it as just a general personal energy field. It reflects this contemporary focus on individual empowerment, personal growth, which is valid in itself, but often quite far removed from Ezekiel's vision or the practices of the early mystics.
So, reflecting on this whole deep dive, it's clear the Merkabah isn't just one thing. It started with Ezekiel's vision, flowed through early mysticism, got reshaped by Kabbalah, interpreted by philosophers, echoed across cultures, and now adapted in all these modern ways. It's still a really dynamic symbol.
Absolutely. It hasn't stopped evolving. It keeps generating new interpretations, new meanings.
And it acts as this incredible bridge between disciplines, doesn't it?
Right.
It captures the interest of theologians, historians, psychologists, artists, even neuroscientists are weighing in. It forces conversations between fields.
That's a great point. Thinking about neurological insights into mystical states, for instance, it connects science and spirituality in ways that can be really productive, even if controversial.
And throughout it all, there's this tension, maybe a necessary tension, between understanding its specific traditional roots.
And acknowledging its broader, perhaps universal appeal as a symbol of transcendence and the human spiritual quest. Appreciating the uniqueness of its origins while seeing the shared human aspirations it taps into.
Ultimately, the Merkabah remains this timeless enigma. It kind of defies easy explanation, it challenges our rational side, but it also evokes this sense of wonder. It connects ancient traditions right up to contemporary thought. It feels like a powerful metaphor for that meeting point between the spiritual and the material, the known and the unknown.
Well said. It continues to provoke thought and inspire exploration.
So, this deep dive, it really shows the Merkabah is so much more than just an old story about a chariot. It's like a testament to the sheer power of human imagination, our capacity for spiritual exploration. And maybe the question for you listening is, what does it mean that one of humanity's oldest, most profound mystical visions can be constantly reinterpreted, experienced, debated across thousands of years, across cultures, even across scientific fields?
It's a powerful reminder, perhaps, that the quest to understand the divine and maybe to understand ourselves isn't a journey with a final stop. It just keeps unfolding.